Dinner was supposed to be peaceful that night, a rare evening when the whole family sat at the same table, without someone complaining, judging, or telling me I wasn't enough. The restaurant lights were warm, soft, creating that kind of cozy illusion where problems pretend to disappear. But illusions don't last. They break. They always break. We were halfway through the meal, laughter echoing from nearby tables, wine glasses clinking gently, when Grandma Elinor suddenly set down her silver fork with the kind of deliberate calm that makes your heartbeat stumble. She turned her head toward me, eyes sharper than I had ever seen them, and said my name with a precision that cut through the air like a blade. "Lena, you're still living in the home I bought for you, correct?" Her tone wasn't casual. It wasn't curious. It was a question loaded with expectation, a truth she believed she already knew. I blinked, stunned, the world shrinking into a cold, tight tunnel. My throat closed. My fingers trembled under the tablecloth as if my bones remembered every humiliation hidden in the cracks of my life. I don't own a home," I managed to whisper, each word tasting like fear. And in that exact second, I watched something inside my mother shatter. The perfect smile she had glued onto her face collapsed into panic, her lipstick trembling at the edges. My father froze, staring at his untouched steak as if it contained the answer to Grandma's devastating question. Grandma's expression transformed, hope collapsing into betrayal. "What do you mean you don't have a house?" she asked, voice trembling not with age but with the realization that something was very, very wrong. She had wired money, hundreds of thousands, to secure a future for me. A home, stability, safety, and now, right in front of a table full of family and guests pretending not to notice, the truth cracked open. Dad tried to chuckle, a thin and hollow sound that didn't even pretend to be real. "She misunderstood, Mother," he said, talking about me like I wasn't sitting right there, like I was too naive to understand my own life. But Grandma wasn't fooled. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, searching for the truth my parents had buried. And for the first time in years, I realized someone actually saw me. Not the failure my parents shaped with their lies. Not the daughter who struggled with bills and shame. She saw the fear, the confusion, the years of being told that the little I had was enough. "You should have a home, Lena," she whispered. And in that moment, the evening shattered, and the first crack of justice surfaced. Before the silence could settle, Mom reached for her napkin to hide the panic twisting across her face, but the trembling was too violent to disguise. Dad straightened his shoulders like a man preparing to perform, not confess. He cleared his throat, loud and exaggerated, a sound meant to force control back into his hands. "Lena exaggerates," he said sharply, as though scolding a child instead of addressing a grown woman who had fought through years of struggle. "She overspends, she doesn't manage her finances properly. She isn't ready for responsibility like property." His words weren't just lies. They were knives sharpened over years of belittlement, slicing away at what little confidence I possessed. I thought of the countless nights I had fallen asleep wearing 2 sweaters, because the heater gave up halfway through winter. I thought of paychecks swallowed by rent, groceries, and the constant fear that one unexpected bill would break me beyond repair. I remembered the moldy corner I scrubbed every week, the bucket beneath the leak that never stopped dripping, the headaches from cheap meals made stretch too thin. And all the while, they had comfort, warmth, luxury, long weekends on lake shores. Grandma's eyes narrowed at their explanation, as if the cracks in their story were finally visible to her. "Protecting her," she repeated, voice low and dangerous. By letting her struggle, Mom jumped in quickly, desperate to control the narrative. "We didn't want to worry you. We thought she wasn't ready. We wanted to make sure your investment was safe." Investment. That's what they called the future meant for me. A resource they controlled, not a gift of love. Something to spend on themselves, then excuse as protection. Grandma turned her gaze from them to me and back again, slowly connecting dots they had tried to bury beneath years of manipulation. I shrank deeper into my chair, a habit born from surviving inside a home where my voice carried no weight. Dad kept talking, his tone turning cold as if he were reading a script he had prepared long ago. "Lena never listens. She wastes opportunity, she lacks discipline." Every accusation was familiar, old enough to scar, fresh enough to sting. I stared at my plate, fighting back tears, because I had spent my whole life trying to prove I was enough. Grandma inhaled, controlling a storm building beneath her ribs. Guests around us still stared into their meals, terrified to witness a truth unfolding. The restaurant air grew heavier, every breath turning sharp. Finally, Grandma spoke, each word crafted from disbelief and dawning fury. Then show me where Lena lives, she said, voice trembling with justice finally waking up. Dad snapped before anyone else could react. That's unnecessary, he barked, but his voice cracked under the weight of a truth he could no longer control. Her place is fine. His panic was louder than his words. Grandma didn't even look at him. She stood slowly, pushing her chair back with a calm that silenced every noise around us. Her cane tapped against the polished floor, once, twice, the kind of sound that slices through excuses. We go now, she declared, not loud but absolute. There was no argument, no negotiation, just a command spoken by a woman who finally saw the depth of deceit that had been fed to her. And just like that we left. The drive through the city felt unreal, streetlights smearing past the windows like streaks of fading hope. Grandma didn't ask questions. She didn't offer comfort. She just sat beside me, hands folded neatly, breathing steady, as if gathering strength for both of us. My building came into view, small and battered, its bricks cracked like a tired face. The entrance bulb flickered weakly above a broken door that stuck every time you tried to open it. Grandma stepped out slowly, her eyes sweeping over every sign of hardship I had swallowed for years. They let you live here, she whispered, and there was so much devastation in those 5 words that I couldn't answer. Inside, I rushed ahead, trying to hide what I could, throwing a jacket over the peeling paint, sliding a bucket away from the center of the room, nudging the window so the cold draft wouldn't slap her in the face. But she noticed it all. She walked through the tiny apartment with the step of someone visiting a grave, fingertips brushing the walls like she was reading every silent struggle trapped in them. The places where plaster crumbled, the stains from leaks, the window taped shut against winter winds. Every flaw spoke louder than any lie my parents had told. You survived more than they ever cared to see, she said. And that single sentence cracked something inside me, something that had been holding all the pain together. For the first time, I admitted the things I had hidden. The nights I missed meals, the exhaustion from working 2 jobs, the fear that my life would collapse if one paycheck came late. Grandma held my hands gently, but with a strength that told me the world wasn't as cold as the one I had been forced to live in. They didn't fail you accidentally, she murmured. They failed you because it benefited them. And that was the moment I realized truth wasn't just painful, it was powerful. It was something that could burn down years of manipulation and finally light a path forward. We barely slept that night. I could hear Grandma moving in the guest room, the soft rustle of papers, the faint tap of a pen against the desk, signs that she was preparing for something none of us could avoid anymore. In the morning, she stood by the door in her navy coat, her cane polished like armor, her expression carved from unshakable resolve. When she told me we were going to meet attorney Daniel Hale, there wasn't fear in her voice, only justice that had finally woken up. My heart hammered like a trapped bird as we entered Daniel's office, walls lined with books and certificates that promised accountability. Mom and Dad were already seated inside. Mom's mascara streaked down her cheeks. Dad's jaw clenched like he was ready to fight his own reflection. They looked smaller than I had ever seen them. We took our seats, and Daniel opened a thick folder packed with documents. He didn't waste a second. Let's discuss the $380,000 transfer from Mrs. Aliner's account, he said. Dad exhaled dramatically, leaning back like a man auditioning for sympathy. We were overwhelmed, he insisted. Lena wasn't ready, we meant no harm. Grandma's face didn't move, not even a twitch. She kept still, waiting for the truth to show its face. Daniel slid another file forward, receipts, bank statements, photographs, renovation bills for the Lakehouse, their weekend palace, designer jewelry, luxury vacations, all tied to the very money meant to give me stability. Dad's mask cracked. He slammed his hand against the table. That money saved this family. We made use of it responsibly. His voice grew desperate, wild, like lies were drowning, and he was trying to keep them afloat. Mom whispered through tears. We were trying to protect what Grandma earned. But every word sounded like a chain dragging through the room. Grandma stood then, not dramatically, not angrily, just purposefully. And the room seemed to shrink under her presence. Samuel, she said quietly, you let my granddaughter live in misery while you drank wine on a deck built from her future. Dad tried to reply, but the weight of her truth crushed his excuses. Silence froze over them. Daniel folded his hands as if he had rehearsed this moment. Mrs. Alina Ross has revised her will, he announced. Dad stiffened. Mom stopped breathing. All assets, the trust, and the Clearwater Bay property will be transferred to Lena Ross. Dad lurched forward. Everything, you're giving her everything. His disbelief cracked like glass, but Grandma didn't look at him. She looked at me, and in her eyes, I finally saw what love looked like when it refused to apologize. Mom gasped like someone had ripped the ground out from under her. Dad's face drained of all color, his eyes flicking wildly between Grandma, Daniel, and the stack of papers that now felt like a mountain crushing his lies. She didn't earn that, he spat, the arrogance turning into something feral. Grandma didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. No, Samuel, she said, each word sharp with truth. She endured what you caused. She survived everything you chose to ignore. Daniel slid a final set of documents forward, property deeds, trust transfer forms, every signature that would take away their stolen comfort. That's when Dad stopped pretending. His calm facade shattered. She manipulated you, he shouted, pointing at me like I was a thief in daylight. She took everything from us, but the only thing I took was a future that had always been meant for me. Grandma raised her cane slightly, not threatening, just reminding him that his reign of control had ended. You lost everything, she said, the moment you chose greed over your daughter. Mom broke into sobs, reaching for my hand like she suddenly remembered what motherhood was supposed to look like. We're family, Lena, she whispered, her voice shaky and small. But family doesn't let you freeze in the dark while they warm themselves by your stolen fire. The truth was already too loud to be unheard. A few days later, Dad showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door like he was owed an apology. His rage cracked the walls. I opened the door only because Grandma stood beside me. He tried to push inside, but her cane blocked him with a strength he never expected. She handled your neglect, Grandma told him, voice trembling with righteous fury. She handled your silence. What she couldn't handle was believing it was her fault. Dad's words died. Mom stepped beside him, eyes swollen, her apology wrapped in desperation and excuses. We didn't know you were struggling so much. But they had known. They just hadn't cared. I felt something shift inside me, a balance tilting after years of being forced into the shadows. We were family, I said quietly, until you chose comfort over me. And then, with a calm I never knew I had, I closed the door. Behind it, I left their guilt, their stories, their control. Ahead of me was a silence that didn't hurt anymore. It healed. The Lakehouse felt unreal the first night I slept there. Too peaceful, too quiet. Almost like stepping into a life meant for someone stronger, wealthier, luckier. Someone I had been taught I could never be. Every wall, every window, every polished floor carried the echo of a future that had been stolen from me, reshaped into weekends of wine and laughter for people who believed I was unworthy of the very bricks beneath their feet. I walked slowly through each room, touching surfaces like they might disappear the moment I blinked. The kitchen smelled like cedar and lemon, the guest room windows open to a lake shimmering beneath the moonlight, and the fireplace waited for warmth that had been denied to me for years. But it wasn't money or beauty that overwhelmed me, it was safety. Peace. Belonging. Grandma visited often, settling into the armchair by the water with her soft gray shawl draped around her shoulders, her cane resting beside her like a reminder that justice can walk slowly, but it still arrives. Some days she told stories of her youth, of battles she fought quietly, of dreams she never allowed anyone to steal. Other days, she simply sat with me, sipping tea, listening to the wind brush against the windows. Her presence stitched pieces of me back together, pieces I hadn't realized were missing. The legal work wrapped up faster than I expected. Daniel handled everything with a precision that left no room for appeals or manipulations. Dad tried for a while, angry calls, harsh letters, threats disguised as desperation. But lies age quickly, and his crumbled faster than he ever imagined. Mom sent one message. A letter filled with apologies that arrived years too late, wrapped around the same excuses that once justified their silence. Grandma asked gently if I wanted to read it. I shook my head. Some wounds heal better when unopened. I turned one bright room into an art studio, sunlight flooding the space every morning, canvases leaning against the walls like promises waiting to be fulfilled. I painted feelings I had never spoken aloud, fear shedding into strength, silence blooming into defiance. Work came easier, breathing came easier. Living felt like something I finally deserved. When the first snow of the season drifted down, I stepped onto the wooden deck, wrapped in Grandma's scarf, watching the lake transform under winter's quiet magic. The world felt softer, safer, finally aligned with a girl who refused to break. I'm safe now, I whispered into the cold night. Not because of the money, not because of the house, but because I chose myself. Grandma squeezed my hand later that evening, her voice a soft ember in the dark. Strength isn't something you discover, she told me. It's something you reclaim. And peace didn't roar into my life. It arrived like snowfall, quiet, steady, and long overdue. Because sometimes, the life you deserve begins the moment you stop apologizing for surviving.